There's a pretty one, Ulysses. There it is.
Hello, BookTube. I'm Sean Breathes Books. I've decided this week that even though it doesn't quite sound right for me to say I'm Sean Breathes Books, because Sean Breathes Books is a sentence rather than a noun phrase. My old channel name was Sean the Book Maniac, so it felt very comfortable to say, hello, I'm Sean the Book Maniac, but that is my dead name. I'm going to start using Sean Breathes Books as a noun phrase so that I don't have to keep saying, hello, I'm Sean of Sean Breathes Books. If any grammarians or other fussy individuals have any problems, please comment below. But it just seems more... It just feels smoother to do it that way. Enough about that. I'll probably make the same spiel for my Friday reads this week. But anyway, so I'm Sean Breathes Books, and I'm here with another book haul. First is a book that I have owned since 1993, and I found my copy in a box on the farm. And that is Carol Shields' I think Pulitzer Prize winning novel, The Stone Diaries. This is a Canadian first edition, I'm sure. And I will tell you the story of Sean and The Stone Diaries. And I'm going to tell you something that I don't think I've ever spoken about publicly, because I wasn't quite sure I trusted my memory, but now I have the evidence. So, I was a grad student in Toronto in 1993, and I hated grad school and all the literary theory so much that I was, it was one of the unhappiest years of my life, despite having loved my undergrad years in Saskatoon as an English major. But graduate studies, it was just horrible. And one day I was so sick of reading Foucault and all those assholes, post-structural Derrida, oh my god, that I just revolted. And I went out of my apartment in downtown Toronto, went to the nearest bookstore, and bought this. I had loved Carol Shields already. This was her newest novel. And I spent a couple days, 2 or 3 days in a row, just reading it to reconnect to my love of literature, because I wasn't reading very much literature in grad school. It was all this bullshit literary theory. I think grad school has changed since then, since the 1990s, but I don't know. But I don't really care. I'm just glad I'm not there. So, I loved this novel, but, I've had a niggling feeling that because I had deadlines to get reports in and stuff, that I put it down very close to the end and never finished it. And I thought, oh, Sean, that can't be right. You must have finished it. Well, when I got this out of a box of my most treasured books that's stored at the farm, there's the bookmark. So I think that's true. I put this down. This was not a bail. I was loving it, but I got pulled back into the cesspool of all the crap I was having to do for grad school and never finished it. This novel is 361 pages, and I stopped at 316. So however many pages that is, 40-something, 45 pages or something. I never read it. So I'm going to reread it because Joe Smith and I have a plan to buddy read it at some point, so that's why I dug it out of the archives, and I wonder what I'm going to think of it, because everything I've reread by Carol Shields, who was my favorite writer in the 1990s, more recently, in the last 5 or so years, I have not enjoyed it all, and much of which I was not even able to finish. So I seem to have regressed or progressed beyond Carol Shields. She just doesn't resonate with me anymore. So I'm hoping this will be the exception, and I do commit, Joe, if you're listening, that I will finish it to find out how the book ends. It wasn't much of it wasn't a particularly plot-driven novel. It was about an old lady, born in 1905, and she was a pretty ordinary woman. She's powerless. She has a very ordinary life, and the way that Carol Shields wrote about that life made it absolutely fascinating. There's photographs. Wasn't it set in the prairies? I can't remember exactly. I think it might have been. There is, in fact, an epigraph to The Stone Diaries by Carol Shields. It's an excerpt from the poem called The Grandmother's Cycle by Judith Downing, published in Converse Quarterly in autumn, but it doesn't say which year, which is very strange. But anyway, here it is. Nothing she did or said was quite what she meant, but still her life could be called a monument, shaped in a slant of available light, and set to the movement of possible music. That is a fabulous epigraph. It's got a family tree. I'll read the first 2 paragraphs. The chapter is entitled Birth, 1905. My mother's name was Mercy Stone Goodwill. She was only 30 years old when she took sick a boiling hot day, standing there in her back kitchen, making a Malvern pudding for her husband's supper. A cookery book lay open on the table. "Take some slices of stale bread," the recipe said, "and 1 pint of currants, half a pint of raspberries, 4 ounces of sugar, some sweet cream if available." Of course, she's divided the recipe in half, there being just the two of them, and what with the scarcity of currants, and Kyler, my father, being a dainty eater. A pick-and-nibble fellow, she calls him, able to take his food or leave it. It shames her how little the man eats, diddling his spoon around in his dish, perhaps raising his eyes once or twice to send her one of his shy, appreciative glances across the table, but never taking a second helping, just leaving it all for her to finish up, pulling his hand through the air with that dreamy gesture of his that urges her on, and smiling all the while, his daft, tender-faced look. What did food mean to a working man like himself? A bother, a distraction, perhaps even a kind of price that had to be paid in order to remain upright and breathing. Well, that is a stunning opening in terms of the writing. Very vivid. I absolutely loved it. Joe, let's try to get to this. I don't think we have room in 2024. Maybe we do, but I'm game. I'm ready when you are. I am recording this on the last day of July, so I missed Jane Austen July. I missed almost every readathon this year. I've never actually taken part in Jane Austen July, and I keep promising Roz that I will. So maybe next year, this will be the book. This is a very special edition of Sense and Sensibility. Look at that. It is published by Broadview. It has a stunning cover, and if you look closely, it's edited by one of my dear friends and former professors, Kathleen James-Cavan, and she gave it to me. It's a brand new edition. I studied Sense and Sensibility under her. I took her, this is back in the halcyon days of my undergrad English career, and she was my English prof for 18th century literature, and Jane Austen was a big part of the syllabus. Whenever I reread Sense and Sensibility, it must be this edition, which she herself has edited. So how fabulous. I should also say that she is a new patron of mine, and I really appreciate that. Let's hear the opening paragraph. It's those J-Knights among you might be bored to tears, but I think the rest of us need to have a listen. The family of Dashwood had long been settled in Sussex. Their estate was large, and their residence was at Norland Park, in the centre of their property, where for many generations they had lived in so respectable a manner as to engage the general good opinion of their surrounding acquaintance. The late owner of this estate was a single man who lived to a very advanced age, and who for many years of his life had a constant companion and housekeeper in his sister. But her death, which happened 10 years before his own, produced a great alteration in his home, for to supply her loss he invited and received into his house the family of his nephew, Mr. Henry Dashwood, the legal inheritor of the Norland estate, and the person to whom he intended to bequeath it. In the society of his nephew and niece and their children, the old gentleman's days were comfortably spent. His attachment to them all increased. The constant attention of Mr. and Mrs. Henry Dashwood to his wishes, which proceeded not merely from interest, but from goodness of heart, gave him every degree of solid comfort which his age could receive, and the cheerfulness of the children added a relish to his existence. Well, that's a very lovely, benign opening to the novel. I know that plot ensues. I don't remember anything that happens in this book, because it was a long time ago, but when I reread it, this is going to be the edition. Isn't that a gorgeous cover? What is that photograph? It is an 1845 photograph of Emily and Frances Anna Savage, photographer unknown. The next two are also going to be... I don't do TBR videos because my life has just been I've been pulled every which way in 2024 and haven't been able to really focus on any one readathon to such a degree that I felt there was enough material to make a TBR video for the readathon. So this is also going to double as my Women in Translation Month TBR. Editing Sean here. Even though I didn't get this book haul video posted in advance of my Friday reads where I talked about these same two books, there is a lot more information, including my reading of the opening paragraphs in this book haul video, so don't speed ahead. You might regret it. I am going to start, I shouldn't say read, I never finish the books in the time frame of the readathon, but I am going to start them as early as this coming weekend. So here's the first one. Both of these are new releases. This one is And the Stones Cry Out by
Commencer. Bienvenue pour cet entretien avec Clara Dupont-Monod. Merci d'être ici.
Okay, I looked up the French. I've looked up the French pronunciation. Clara Dupont-Monod. So let's go with that. And it's translated from the French by Ben Faccini. Published by Maljartschuk Press, 2024. I think all I need to do is read the opening sentence of the synopsis. I hate reading the synopsis, but the opening sentence is all I need to know. This is the story of a child with black eyes that float in and out of focus. A child soft and round with translucent blue-veined legs, unable to hold his weight. Well, that sounds incredible. Dupont-Monod is a journalist. She has written for Cosmopolitan and Marianne. She's also written novels that draw on medieval myths and history. I'm glad I'm not reading one of those, at least about the myths. And this is her second novel to be translated into English. The first one, about Eleanor of Aquitaine, English titled The Revolt, was published in 2020. I have a habit of reading the epigraphs recently in my book hauls, so here are the two epigraphs for this novel. The first is from the Bible. I tell you that if these should hold their peace, the stones would immediately cry out. Luke chapter 19, verse 40. The next one is from a book, I don't know if it's a novel or what it is, called The Leaning Girl by Benoit Peters and Francois Schulten. What does normal mean? My mother is normal. My brother is normal. I have no desire to be like them. That's lovely. And the biblical epigraph is where the title comes from, and the stones cry out. Well, I am intrigued as all get out. I'm going to read the opening paragraph of chapter 1. Chapter 1 is called The Firstborn. Once upon a time, a maladapted boy was born into a family. Maladapted is an ugly, demeaning word, but it captures the reality of his limp body and empty, wandering eyes. Terms like damaged or incomplete, which imply an object beyond use, fit for the scrap heap, are too strong. Maladapted rightly suggests that this boy lived outside any form of functionality. His hands couldn't grasp, and his legs couldn't move. But he existed, all the same, on the edge of other people's lives. True, he was not fully part of them, but he was present, like a shadow in the corner of a painting. Disconcerting, yet deliberately placed there by the artist. It's very honest. I'm checking it out because I was a little uncomfortable with how harsh that depiction of the son was. I see that it's based on her own experience of having a disabled sibling. I think it's going to be interesting to see how I feel about the depiction of this disabled character, but boy, the writing was just stunning. The second and final book that I'm planning to start during Women in Translation Month, I mean, there may be others, but none that are also going to be part of a book haul, is this newly translated Ukrainian novel, Forgottenness, by Tanja Maljartschuk, translated from the Ukrainian by Zenia Tompkins. This is put out by Bulan Press. I'll spell that on the bottom. I'd never heard of this press. In Ireland in 2024. Two timelines. One is historical and one is contemporary. In the contemporary timeline, a writer is got some mental health challenges, anxiety, and obsessive thoughts, and she gets fixated on a important person in the Ukrainian independence movement in the early 20th century. And that sounds fabulous. Opening three paragraphs, the first two of them are like one sentence or two sentences long. The most difficult thing to explain, even to myself, is why him? Where did this story of ours come from? Who are we to one another? No one, I reply. We've never met. Our meeting was physically impossible. We aren't relatives, we aren't fellow countrymen, we aren't even of the same nationality. He was Polish, and I'm Ukrainian. He was an intellectual, a philosopher active in politics, a poet with a place in history. I'm just a person who manipulates words and ideas, with no real profession. I can write, or I can remain silent. Our lives were too disparate to comfortably fit into a shared narrative, if not for my irrational stubbornness. And finally, this is the winner of some big book prize recently, Brotherless Night by Vivi Ganeshananthan.
Ganeshananthan.
And this is a Sri Lankan novel Set in Jaffna in 1981, and it won, I don't know what it won something. Maybe the Women's Prize? I'm not sure. It has been widely lauded, let's leave it at that. It was published in 2023. Vasugi is the first name, but Vivi is what she uses. Her previous novel was called Love Marriage. She lives in America. There are 2 epigraphs. The first one is from Rajani Thiranagama. There is no life for me apart from my people. The second one is from Rajan Huli, if I'm pronouncing that right. History is also a casualty of terror. Protagonist in Jaffna in 1981 is 16-year-old girl who wants to be a doctor, and then civil war ensues. I have read enough novels set in Sri Lanka in the last 5 or so years to know that I'm in for a powerful and very challenging read. Opening paragraph from Chapter 1. Chapter 1 is called The Boys with the Jaffna Eyes. I met the first terrorist I knew when he was deciding to become one. Now that is an opening line. Kay and his family lived down the road from me and mine, in one village of the Tamil town called Jaffna, in Sri Lanka. The Jaffna Peninsula is the northernmost part of the country. Many people have died there, some killed by the Sri Lankan army and the state, some by the Indian peacekeeping force, and some by the Tamil separatists, whom you know as the terrorists. Many people, of course, have also lived. That is absolutely incredible. And just the political, I want to say sassiness, but it's much more important than merely sassiness, but the political badassedness of this one phrase, whom you know as the terrorists, referring to the Tamil separatists. Oh my God. Well, based on the opening paragraph, I think I can see what all the fuss was about. Which of these books might you fuss about the most in terms of wanting to try first? I look forward to your thoughts, and thanks for watching.